It is the final word with Jeff Lemon and Adam Collins. The show's brought to you by Maurice Blackburn. For just about the final time, we might have one more go with them next week on the weekly show. We've been telling you about superannuation insurance because we tell you about superannuation with CBUS, and then you get insurance with that, and then that insurance covers you if you can't work, if you're injured, if you're ill. If you're incapacitated for whatever reason, you may have insurance that may cover you. And sometimes that insurance doesn't necessarily cough up. Sometimes you don't know what you're entitled to. Sometimes you need somebody who knows the ropes. And that's one of the pro-worker things that Maurice Blackburn are experts in.
I like how we've gone on this journey with Maurice Blackburn across the last, I guess it's probably been nearly 6 months now, Jeff, where we were able to set it up and explain where they fit in, and going back to 1919 and the work they've done on behalf of working people and do proudly around the country with some of the best lawyers in the land. Much of that work on a no-win, no-fee basis, and then expanding into talking about super insurance and the challenges of that, and why having a law firm on your side that are there for working people it could be essential. So those are messages that we're proud to continue talking about, and hopefully we'll keep telling you about Maurice Blackburn for a long time into the future. So yes, all you need to do is search Maurice Blackburn Super Insurance about that specific topic. And of course, they have offices all across the country. Maurice Blackburn Lawyers, Australia's #1 plaintiff law firm. Jeff.
Thank you. Let us play a game. Let us play a little bit, just a slight dabble, just a toe in the pool of Nerd Pledge. Nerd Pledge, the game we play with the nice people on the internet who fund this program. They're the ones who send in amounts of currency in a configuration, in a numerical order that is somehow a clue to something cricket related. You and I have to figure out what it means. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. This is a revisit for Ed Henty, because I ran into Ed at the Big Day Not Outs lightning knockout cricket competition for the Yarra Pub Cricket League on the weekend. Ed was in fine form with the Quokkas having been knocked out early, as tends to be the case, according to his somewhat downbeat assessment of their chances. Have you played already? I said, well, I wouldn't categorize it as playing. He said that would imply some level of ability. So the number that Ed sent in at him a while ago was $3.21. Okay. And you and I looked at it. This was the one with the clue that said from Launceston to Antigua. And we found a long way around to Ricky Ponting playing for the Antigua Hawksbills in, I think, an early edition of the CPL. Does this remember?
2013. Yeah, Ponting and his last game.
13 or 14, maybe.
It was his last game it might have been 14. But I know that the key bit here is that he got listed to bat at 8 in his final game, but still implemented or executed a run out of some repute. So that did he get a run in Glenn's book? I don't think we mentioned. No, we didn't, because he was at Surrey either just before or just after.
Oh yeah,
that. It's all part of that same.
Maybe he was at Surrey.
That weird dismount period where Ponting remains a domestic cricketer for a little while when he finished playing for Australia, which he didn't need to do, but I guess he was giving a bit back and enjoying some IPL time, and why wouldn't you?
So initially Ed sent in this reply to say, well, while me and my beard loved the Ricky Ponting Antigua Hawksbills answer, it's not quite correct. The answer involves 4 players, of which Ricky is one, and I'll give you Viv Richards as another because you did mention him in passing. You have 2 more players to guess. If you're still not picking up the length, think of the number as 3-1. So Ed had a word in my ear that helped get me on the right track for this on the weekend. So the original clue, Launceston to Antigua, and we were looking at that as a journey. Because that's what Ponting did. He started in Launceston, he ended in Antigua in professional cricket. Launceston to Antigua could more appropriately be construed as a ratio or a scoreline, something to something, something versus something. And we were looking at things around World Cup final centuries. It's not World Cup final centuries because some players who made World Cup final centuries also did this other thing, but some did not. Ricky Ponting is one of them, 2003 World Cup final. He does make 140, famously, and he does the other thing. In 1987, David Boone did not make a World Cup final century. He made 75 from 125 balls.
But he was player of the match.
And in 2015, J.P. Faulkner did not bat, didn't make 100, did take 3 for 36 from 9 overs, and was also player of the match. So What do they have in common? They're all from
Was that 10 years
Launceston.
ago? Was that 10 years ago today?
10
I've got a feeling it was the 24th of March. Someone will correct me. Was it
It's
the
the
14th
kind
of
of thing
March?
you would remember.
Yeah,
It was late. It was late March.
You keep
It
doing
might
your
have
thing
been
and I'll
like
find
even
out.
the 29th or something. I think it was like right at the end.
Yeah, let's have a look.
27th?
I'm
I'm
it
going to
was
go
the
27th.
it was the 29th of March. So we're
29th.
So,
I was
yeah,
right with my
29th of March.
first
So we're
bit.
nearly there. So yeah, right at the end of the season.
That may be the first and maybe only time that like a date of something that actually happened in our lives rather than a historical one is something that I remembered and you didn't. That's weird.
I think the reason I had 4 in my head was because the World Cup started on the 14th of February, which is a significant date in my life.
Sure.
And also the day that Jeff Lemon's Channel 9 piece was released and his career was turbocharged accordingly.
Was it on Valentine's Day? Interesting.
Well, it was the night before the games. The games were on the 14th.
Yes.
That's when the piece was out.
So they're all from Launceston, and they were all player of the match in a World Cup final. Clive Lloyd did make 100 in the 1975 final and was player of the match, but he was not from Antigua. He was from Guyana. But who was from Antigua is Vivian Richards, who not only made 100 in 79, but was gonged for it and was player of the match. So we have 4 players. The number is $3.21. Which means we have to interpret it as 3-2-1, as in that's the ratio. Launceston are leading Antigua in World Cup Final Player of the Match awards by 3-1. Ed, thank you for the help because I would never have got that otherwise, but we at last have solved your number.
Okay. Whenever I see Ed's name, I think about the member for Henty, which was, I'm not sure when that seat first was established, but it was abolished. Okay. I think it was abolished around the time of the 93 election. Yeah, Jane Child, who was the long-term member for Henty, she won and lost and won the seat again. I reckon she was
right.
She was the first woman speaker of the House of Representatives. I know that she was Hawke Speaker. So
right.
But that covered like the area that now is mostly Chisholm. And Hotham, I think Hotham and Chisholm used to be bridged or joined up by Henty. So so it was a swing seat. But Hotham's always been a Labor seat, and Chisholm's been a Labor seat since 1998, with the exception of one term, I think. So, yep, that part of Inner Melbourne, is the former division of Henty.
I always think about Ed Hardy, which is the kind of loud T-shirts worn by guys wearing cargo pants with bulging calf muscles and those hats with the really flat. Those caps with the flat brims, and they're probably selling you a mixture of like cocaine and illegal creatine out of the boot of their car outside the laneway where they record their alt-right podcast. So
you've stayed in the house of someone who made a lot of money out of that.
Out of Ed Hardy.
Yeah, a friend of mine
or cocaine and creatine.
started a blog in 2009 called Things Bogans Like. And it wasn't a critique of like, and this is totally typecasting here, like mullet haircuts and stubby shorts or whatever, which I think was the definition of bogan. And they used the Ed Hardy T-shirt as the nouveau bogan, as the definition of what the bogan had become. And they ended up getting like 3 books out of that and appearing quite a bit on television, on like the Today Show and on Sunrise and stuff like that. So if you're listening, Mickey, Michael, Miguel, Wilson, love to you.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Now, where are we? We're moving away from Ed Henty. We're moving into World Test Championship reforms, in inverted commas. Tim Wigmore wrote a piece during the week about some of the possibilities because basically England are not happy at having missed the final all 3 times, and they don't like the way that things are structured, and they don't like the fact that people take points away from them when they don't actually conform to the requirements of the matches as set out in terms of the need to actually bowl some overs. So they're looking at a bunch of things. They're talking about weighted results based on the seeding of your opponent. They're talking about more points for more loading on points for victories away from home, which maybe has something to be said for it. A bit sort of away goals rule in the Champions League group stage sort of thing, or because Bayer Leverkusen trading on that away goal against Paris Saint-Germain to send them through if they can just equalise here. Now, I don't know, vibes, thoughts, feelings.
Could it be more blatant? Like, could it be more clearly like double speak? People are pissed off South Africa made the final and had a relatively easy draw on the way through. A lot of people are cross about this, not least England. It's been trailed by Richard Thompson, the chair of the ECB, before that. What was that comment the other week that he made about they want to see the best playing the best and so on? This is all related to that. And Tim Wigmore had the story in the Telegraph and has seemingly got much of what's being mooted behind the scenes. So, yeah, weighted results against seeds and then weighted results, or as you say, they're kind of an away goals rule. Wasn't Ben Stokes complaining about this being too complicated 5 minutes ago? And now we're going to weighted points and seeds. I'm sure he won't.
I would love like a show, like a half-hour streaming show where Ben Stokes has to sit down and explain the new World Test Championship format. Once this all comes through, he has to walk you through it from top to bottom.
Oh, don't worry. I'm sure as soon as Ben Stokes is retired, it won't be long before he's got long YouTube programs and all the rest of it that are there for all of you to watch, and other places too. But I'm sure some of it will be done through that medium. But yeah, the way in which, and Ben Gardner did a great job picking through this on the Wisden website and the newsletter during the week. Like, isn't it bonkers that we don't know how the next cycle will operate when we've only got one game before it begins? Like, the World Test Championship final is on the 11th of June, then it all begins again. So, but yeah, I sort of fundamentally this idea that South Africa got an easy run, therefore they made it. The only way to make the World Test Championship truly fair is to have a system where they all play each other, and that won't happen because India and Pakistan won't play each other. So you're dealing with compromises from the outset. And look, you could easily game your schedule, could you not? If you want to maximize your points, could you not engineer it that you're playing lower seeds away from home and hoover up that way? Yeah. It seems like a really easy and obvious thing in a way that you can manipulate the Future Tours program. And we know that the FTP is ultimately going to serve the commercial interests of the big three, the big one plus the other two. So, yeah, it all seems very obvious if you spend more than 2 minutes looking at it, what this is designed to do, which is to make sure that a combination of India, Australia, and England will continue to play in this until such time that they break it into. They can't break it into, I saw this in one news report about, are we going to see the tier system implemented for this cycle? We can't due to the FTP. That's it. The Future Tours program sits on top of the World Test Championship and has 2 years to run. The tiered stuff is what we're looking at from 27 onwards. That's when the whole world changes. We've got one more cycle. However this breaks up with points, we've got one more cycle of roughly the same. We know where these games will be played and so on. It's the one after that, which, as we talked about in some depth on the podcast last week, where all bets are off, and the way in which Saudi Arabian money might influence the Future Tours program and how other tournaments bob up and get more time and more space in the schedule. So, as we've said many, many times, it's all up for grabs at the moment.
The framing of it as the best teams versus the best teams is maybe the most ludicrous bit. If you assume that by the best teams they mean the richest teams being India and Australia have made 4 of the 6 spots. They've had 3 WTC finals so far. So they've had 6 openings, 4 of which have been occupied by Australia and India once against each other. And so one of them has been in all of the finals. England's been 5th, 4th and 4th across the WTC things, I think. Where's their claim to be one of the best teams, to be the team that should buy rights? There hasn't been a World Test Championship cycle where you could look at England's whole span and say, by rights, they've been a dominant Test side and they should be in that final. They've had some amazing results at times, but they've had a bunch of very ordinary ones as well.
And they've had points deducted in a very generous way. And by that, I mean, remember the rules changed on this in the middle of the 23 Ashes, which helps both Australia and England. England should have had more points deducted if they didn't retrofit the way those deductions were going to take place. And that's clearly part of this as well. They want to also provide you with more points if you win by an innings or win in a shorter space of time. And, bullying teams lower down the seedings will facilitate getting bigger points there and perhaps offsetting where you might. But clearly they're going to get rid of points deductions for slow over rates, right? Like that, or they're going to change it to be, you only lose points after 140 overs in the field or something like that, which so rarely happens. But it serves
or you lose 1/100th of a point for each over, so you effectively only lose 1 point over the course of a duration. I'm wondering if they prioritise, if you get an extra weighting for away tours, does that mean you then start to see teams cooking the schedule with who they try to play away? Are they trying to line up short series against weaker sides away from home so that they can go over there and kick them around like Australia did with Sri Lanka over the last couple of weeks. I'm sure I know it can
it's one
backfire,
way.
but
Well, if they could change the FTP for the next 2 years of World Test Championship, I'm sure they would. But it's already inked in, so they can't do anything with that. And as I said before, it's so likely that
they'll ditch the whole thing.
Yeah, that most nations won't be in the WTC as full members. It'll be 4 or 5 or 6 will be in that top tier, and the rest can suit themselves.
And if you've got weighted rankings, like if you think there are arguments now about whether it's fair that this team played this team, South Africa played Bangladesh, blah, 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 imagine the arguments that you're going to have about how a team should be weighted, like how somebody's win over this other side should be reconfigured with the loading on the points and all the rest of it. You could argue about that stuff for 100 years.
Yeah, and look, I've said it before, but we're going to look back at the years between 2019 and 2025, or maybe 27, but probably now. These first 3 World Test Championship cycles, we're going to look back on in 20 or 30 years as the glory days of Test cricket. It's been imperfect. It's not been great, but the contests, the volatility in results, the fact that there's been the organising structure, the volume of series, even if they've been imperfect 2 test match series, we're going to look back at this as a great time. And we're going to lament what we've sold off when eventually we end up in little windows of 2 or 3 weeks here and there where we are deigned to have the flexibility to play long-form cricket in and around the T20 cycle, where we're getting to watch 286 plays, 279 over and over again until we all leave this mortal coil.
The next step of this is that South Africa don't play a single test at home this summer. They're playing Australia the following season, so that's October 2026 is their next home test series. Part of the reason for this is that they've got to provide access to the grounds to fix up some of the grounds for the upcoming World Cup. But basically, it's very convenient for the SA20 for the T20 comp that it gets to branch out into that space. And South Africa don't have the inconvenience of losing some money hosting some test matches.
First time that South Africa haven't hosted test matches at home since readmission. So it looks dreadful. Looks dreadful. It's not, as you say, there is the mitigation of them needing access to the venues for the rehabilitation of them, or the sprucing up of them, rather.
Surely you could play at one.
Cup.
Surely you could get one ground that you could have a couple of tests at.
It's small mitigation, granted, but there's some mitigation there. So they have a bumper summer the following year with both Australia and England visiting across their season. So, and that's all in the FTP. So this is not new news as such, but it doesn't make it any less galling to think that South Africa, if they turn Australia over at Lords, won't play a home test match in their home summer, which is another emblem of where we're at. And you're spot on, Jeff, about the SA20 getting into exactly the part of the summer from Boxing Day onwards, which will make sure that they have the best competitive advantage with making sure that as much money can be funneled into that comp with players and so on. And what that'll mean for the Big Bash, watch this space.
The Champions Trophy figures, this was interesting reading from the ICC as it came out, that said that the Champions Trophy was the most watched cricket tournament ever. It said that the final was the second most watched ODI of all time, and then in brackets said outside of World Cups. So if we don't count the most watched tournaments, we don't count the most popular part of one-day international cricket as a format, it was the second most watched game. I'm not sure what the first most watched outside of World Cups was. Maybe it was the previous Champions Trophy final. But anyway, according to all the digital numbers, which are through the roof, and we know there's no way for companies to manipulate those, the digital numbers are that hundreds of thousands of billions of seconds, or however they count these figures now. It's like the watch time thing that Cam Fink always used to enjoy looking at on YouTube. It'd be like, a million hours of somebody watching you two talk about a game that happened at the MCG or whatever it is. So the billions, trillions, whatever of minutes, seconds, hours were all apparently watched by everybody tuning into the Champions Trophy, except for everybody that I know and that you know in the world of cricket. Maybe we are just the old men who the world has passed by, but apparently everyone else was on it.
I was tempted to refer this to that Did Not Happen of the Year awards account on social media, where they kind of catalogue all of the social media posts from people who are clearly lying and have a knockout tournament at the end of the year. But I thought better of that because I didn't want to spend my whole weekend replying to crazies on the internet. But like I could understand if it was an on average per game escalation, because obviously India played a greater proportion of these games because it was a shorter tournament, and India played 5 times out of the 20 games. So that would naturally skew that number. But I mean, yeah, that line in there about it's the most watched one-day international outside of the World Cup. I mean, just fucking hell, just stop pulling our pisses, you know. Just stop. Doesn't look like this is just fucking. Oh, anyway, especially when it was celebrated like a World Cup win. You know, come on.
I enjoyed this. This is from one of the broadcasters, one of the people who works at whichever of the digital places it is. This really goes deeply into our what the hell does this mean? What's the segment called? Corporate bullshit. Here we go. Quote. This accomplishment is a result of the combined strength of the widest, most deeply penetrated multi-platform destination for sports, the fan-focused storytelling approach of the GeoStar megacasts, and our superior technological capabilities. The interest in the tournament was fueled by a one-of-a-kind cohort-based marketing effort which built diverse apertures for the tournament in order to recruit at scale differentiated audience segments with distinct persuasions across devices. What does that mean?
I think that means you can watch the cricket on your phone.
Oh, so more people could watch it on their phone.
I think that means we have an app now, so you can watch the cricket on your phone. That's how I interpret that line, the whole paragraph.
Diverse apertures.
More people watch because they can watch it on the phone.
Show us your diverse apertures. What does it mean? What happens to people's brains that makes them speak like this? Yeah. How is this construed to be, this will be a good facsimile of intelligence?
It's like hearing Mr. Milchick on Severance. Yeah, it's a lot. Speaking of all of this, did you see Jay Shah hanging out, taking selfies with, well, not selfies necessarily, but having photos with the FIFA boss the other day? I probably wouldn't do that. I probably wouldn't do
the giant baby, Gianni Infantino.
Yeah, I saw his Twitter. I clicked on the Twitter profile.
John Baby. My name's John Baby.
Baby John Burgess.
Yeah. He's kind of He's the opposite of Baby John, I think.
Indeed.
That guy's one of the least impressive human beings, I think. Like, I thought when Sepp Blatter left the building, I thought it'll be hard for them to find somebody as objectionable as him. But I reckon old Gianni's given it a good shake in the last few years.
And the way they were trading compliments about each other, it's, you can pick out of that what you wish. But then I saw, it gave me reason to click on his Twitter profile just to see what else he's writing on there. Yeah, it's good to know what the ICC boss is saying. And I stress to those watching this on YouTube and elsewhere who get very cross about these things, like, we are on Team Jay Shah as far as we want him to be successful and grow the global game, because what do we get out of him being a shit chair of the ICC? Well, what does anyone get out of this getting worse and worse? We want to see the words that he has said in the past about growing cricket into new and interesting places. We want that to be true. So that's the first thing to just cover off here. But like, it makes it hard to advance the case that you're an independent chair of an organisation where the cover photo of his Twitter page is literally him waving an Indian flag. I mean, like,
a huge Indian flag.
It doesn't matter that you can be at once a proud Indian or a proud member of any country and just do things that convey to the wider public that you are doing your best to maintain impartiality. And Jay Shah has failed in that when jumping around at the Champions Trophy games and the Travis Head celebration thing and all the rest of it. There are ways to present yourself to avoid conversations like the one we're having at the moment, and he's not doing that right now. It's as though he doesn't give a fuck, and he probably doesn't. Why would he?
Modern game stuff. There's a story that popped up during the week about some cricket app game that's getting sued by New Zealand Cricket and Cricket Australia, and the players' unions are involved and image rights are involved. This stuff is so tedious that in a way I'd rather not know about it. It's I don't know. I don't even know what they're doing. What is it? Is the game just a cover for a gambling app? Like,
I think it's
who's
less
suing who?
I think it's less to do with that and more to do with that fundamental of who owns the image rights for cricketers. And that's always contested space. And this is terrain that Todd Greenberg himself has had to deal with when he was the boss of the Australian Cricketers Association. And now, in some respects, he ends up in a different part of that ecosystem as the chief executive of CA. Often those two perspectives don't align. So, but there's the influence of the World Cricketers Association, and where the New Zealand Players Association fit into this as well, where Heath Mills, who's the boss of that joint, and been involved in the WCA, is also a director at the mob who are backing the game, Real Cricket, which is what this point of controversy is. So it's complicated stuff. The reality is that we should really interview Todd Greenberg now that he's had a little bit of time to get his feet under the desk, and we'll ask him about it and get his perspective. So that's definitely on our agenda to speak to Todd, who's been really good to us in his previous role. And as soon as he was announced as the new CEO, he appeared at our live show in Adelaide as well. So I'm sure that won't be difficult to thread the needle on. But yeah, this is an emblem of where this used to be something that was less contested and now is seemingly a story every 6 months in one way or another.
Very quickly, because we need to get to our IPL segment with Ben Jones on the women's T20 qualifiers we were talking about last week. The USA have gone through. They made 131 and then bowled out Canada for 53, so they're into the global qualifiers in the middle of the year. The Australian women's team are in New Zealand, smashing them around as per usual in T20 cricket. Ash Gardner broke a finger in the first game. Beth Mooney's still there, and that seems to be the only thing that generally matters. She made 75 not out in the first game and 70 off 42 balls in the second game, won the chase in the first game. So to update those stats, 15 innings out of 50 in her T20 career, she's chased and been not out at the end while opening. Ridiculous consistency. And then, a few bits and pieces jumping around in England. Shakib Al Hassan is allowed to bowl again. Shoaib Bashir is on loan because there are too many spinners down at Somerset. So he's got the old problem that Dom Bess had back in the day. Dan Worrell saying that he probably won't get picked for the Ashes. Harry Conway's playing some county cricket. What were your favourite bits in England for last week?
Well, yeah, the Shakib thing's interesting because this provides him the opportunity to once again sign with a county or play in the 100. So the independent reassessment of his action at Loughborough, having been pinged in that one game he played for Surrey last year, went to Loughborough, as they used to joke, University of WA equivalent, but now he's good to go again. So, keep an eye on that with Shakib. But Shoaib Bashir, this might be one of the storylines of 2025 for English cricket, remembering that he played every test last year. And now he can't get a game for Somerset. This is not the first time this happened. It was the case with Dom Bess and Jack Leach when they were the number 1 and number 2 England spinners, respectively, that they had to find somewhere else for Dom Bess to play. Went on a bit of a journey. Well, now it's the same for Shoaib Bashir. Not unreasonably, Somerset see Jack Leach as their number 1 spinner. But where does he go? He goes to Glamorgan, where Mason Crane had a really good year. I mean, if I was saying who is the most likely spinner to be playing in the first test of the series at the WACA, sorry, not the WACA, what's it called now? Perth Stadium. I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't rule it out being Mason Crane, a guy who's got, for a while there, they were trying to pigeonhole him as a white ball bowler. He's turned a corner since moving to Glamorgan, and now he'll be competing for a spot, presumably early in the season, with England's current incumbent number 1 spinner, Shoaib Bashir. So I feel like it's the wrong place to put him, but we'll keep an eye on that as we go. And Dan Worrell, as you point out, is trying to sort of talk down the Ashes stuff. Surrey have Essex away round 1 and Hampshire at home in round 2. But the Dan Worrell story will become more and more interesting when he becomes eligible for England in 7 days from now, Jeff. I believe it's April the 1st when he theoretically could play for England. Harry Conway will play a few games. And for me, that's the buff factor. So Conway has not always been in South Australia's number 1 team, but he would have had Darren Lehman around him, I suppose, in his circles. Jake Lehman, of course, playing for the Redbacks. And it'll be interesting to see how Northants go in Division 2, trying to get back to Division 1 with Lehman coaching them in his first season. They've got Kent in round 1. So the buff effect is one of the things to watch as we move towards April in England.
Very good. That's us wrapped up with some of the things that happened in the world of cricket for the week. Let's go to the IPL with Ben Jones.